Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar for the South Carolina Arts Commission. We are
Hold,
so
Dori.
excited.
Hang on. Sorry, 1 second. We're getting everybody in.
No worries. I'll wait.
We're just sorry, here we go. We'll just give a couple minutes for everybody to come in.
Sounds like a plan. See, I was so excited having so many people here. It's exciting.
You were. Look at them, and they are just
They're coming in.
flowing in. We're up to 13.
Yay!
Yay! And we have some excitement. I love that. Lots of familiar names. Love that folks just keep coming back. That must be telling us that we are doing something right, Dori.
Yes. Hi, Cherise. Good to see you. Or hear you or see you in the chat. Yay! You just tell me when, Mary.
All right, I've seen it kind of steady and we're at 15, so let's go ahead and get this party started.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited to have you for our South Carolina Arts Commission webinar series. We are excited. We are so thankful to the South Carolina Arts Commission for being able to work together to host this webinar series this year for the 2024-25 fiscal year. And we are going to get ready to start, and we will go to our next slide. For those of you who are not familiar with, or some of you who are returning, we'll talk all about what the mission of the South Carolina Arts Commission is. They want to make sure that access to arts is for all people in South Carolina. And in support of their commitment at the end of the 2022 fiscal year, the South Carolina Arts Commission launched their first large-scale effort to support arts organizations who had a desire to make their facilities and programs more accessible. Since that launch, our partnership with Able South Carolina has grown, and we are now working collaboratively to support arts programs, services, and events across the state in their accessibility journeys. South Carolina Arts Commission and Able South Carolina have developed a strategic partnership that aims to increase access in the arts sector on a statewide basis. Woohoo! We're so excited. All right, next slide. So we're excited today to talk about the technical assistance opportunities for arts organizations in South Carolina. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to attend previous webinars, some of the things that we've talked about and provided organizations with assistance both in person and on webinars are inclusive disability policies and procedures. We've talked about how to build disability inclusive leadership and community partnerships. We've had the pleasure of discussing accessible communications both through PDF documents and social media. We talked about how to provide inclusive program consultation to arts programs and services. And lastly, website audit follow-up consultation. If you haven't gotten a chance to watch some of these webinars, or you just want to have fun and delve a little deeper, feel free to go to the South Carolina Arts Commission's YouTube channel on engaging and including youth with disabilities. That was in February. Woohoo! We did one on disability culture and awareness. We've done alternative formats and accessible communications. We've done what is website and document accessibility, how to make arts programs and programs accessible, and building inclusion through employees and volunteers. Woohoo! And we have the link at the bottom of the slide to the playlist of all of those wonderful webinars that we hope you'll either take part in the first time or dive deeper and enjoy it a little bit more. But today's webinar that we're so excited to host is But We Don't Own Our Building. And I'm excited to present with my colleague, Mary Alex Kopp. Woohoo! So this is the big question that Able South Carolina and the South Carolina Arts Commission get all the time. What can we do about accessibility when we don't control the space we're in? And how can we think about accessibility from the beginning if we don't own our own space? And we're excited to have that dialogue today. All right, woohoo! We often say in the course of our work that it's not really about the places that the programs and events are held. It's really about the programs and the planning that you do to ensure that accessibility happens, even if your space is not owned by you. So one of the things we want to share first is, how does the law apply to arts programs and events and ensuring accessibility, even if you don't own the building? What it says under the ADA, or the Americans with Disabilities Act, is that access to public programs, including the arts, has to be accessible. That means it applies to what you offer, not just where it's offered. So it's focusing on the actual event and program itself, as well as the space where you're doing the program or event. Title III of the ADA, which applies to public accommodation, says that any entity or organization that provides services open to the public has to ensure that that program is accessible and the space you're providing it in is accessible and inclusive of people with disabilities. My favorite, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, as amended, which includes both Section 504, which talks about physical spaces themselves, as well as Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, as amended, says that digital, web, and communication regarding programs and events has to be accessible, especially when we're receiving any kind of federal funding. It's essential. And lastly, web content accessibility guidelines. You know, I'm excited. This is new to Title II under the Department of Justice's final rule. Says that all digital content, including e-commerce, ticketing, social media, forms, application, anything to do with that program or event, must be accessible digitally to people with disabilities who want to take part, which would be, overall, my friends, everyone. Most everyone I talk to wants to come to arts, events, and programs. I just had to talk about that with our peer support program last week, and they said, do you know how many programs we want to go to? And sometimes people just don't realize their website isn't accessible, or they don't realize trying to get that ticket that's digital, if it's not in an accessible format, they can't read it to be able to bring it up on their phone to show you to attend that event, or even the registration. So all of these things are so important. And so what we want you to take away today, it's not just the space that has to be accessible, but the program implementation from the beginning needs to be accessible and inclusive as well. Woohoo! All right. Who's responsible? And I love this picture. Woohoo! Hi, Amy Lou. Amy Lou is saying to us, if you run the program, you are responsible for making it accessible, even if it's a rented space. I'm going to ask y'all to see if you're awake at 3:10 in the afternoon. Who's responsible for making that event or program and space, ensuring it's accessible? Who wants to answer that in the chat? We are. Love it. Some of you even said me specifically. All right. Woohoo! Exactly. The same is true for us. When we hold an event, program in the community, we have to ensure it's accessible and inclusive on all of those same formats too. So what is the critical part of this? not just making sure your event is accessible, but it's inclusive. And when we say inclusive, that means it's integrated. That means Dori, who wants to come with her husband, Dori, who wants to come with her family, Dori, who wants to go to that theater event with my BFF. It has to be accessible and integrated. I can't tell you how many times, as a person with a disability, when my husband and I have gone to community arts programs, sporting programs, theatrical programs, etc., and I get there and they're like, well, you can sit here. And my husband can sit somewhere else in the auditorium, in the arena, in the event space. I'm going to tell y'all, if my husband's clear across the room, it doesn't make for a great date night because we were there to be together and we want to be together. So integration is the pivotal piece of this, ensuring that we're providing people with disabilities the same opportunities as we would want in the mainstream of our community, the mainstream of our society. And the laws say, especially the ADA, that public entities have to make their programs, services, and activities accessible to people with disabilities in the most integrated way appropriate to their needs. We often hear from the community, but we have an activity that's geared toward people with disabilities specifically. And while that may be something that some people choose to participate in, we share with you that Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act says that people with disabilities have the right to the opportunity to be able to participate with our peers without disabilities and have that equal opportunity to program services or activities, which means overall, if you're having a theater program for all people, even though you might offer a special evening or afternoon session that's geared toward people with sensory disabilities or other types of disabilities, if that individual would prefer to participate in the integrated program, they have the right to do so and should be encouraged to do so. And that doesn't just come from us, it comes from the Department of Justice too. So I will tell y'all, I appreciate the programs that are geared toward people's needs, but I also, there are times I will tell you 99% of the time, as a person with a disability, and I do a lot of community work with people with all types of disabilities, they will tell me 90% of the time that they would prefer to be in the integrated program. They want to be with their peers, their friends, their loved ones, their community folks, that they can meet new friends and make networking opportunities. So it's important that we all are facilitating integration to make that possible. Woohoo! We know a lot of us don't own our buildings, but you know what? You don't have to own it, because access is still all of our responsibilities, even if you rent or borrow the space. I can't tell you how many times Able, South Carolina has either rented or borrowed a space, and we are still responsible for ensuring the accessibility of the event, the program, and the space, even though we don't own it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and go to the next slide. So I know you all are thinking like we do. How do I even start? This sounds like such a big, monumental task. But really, it's not hard or difficult. You start with what you control. And what do you all control? You all can control the registration forms being accessible and inclusive. So using platforms that are accessible like Google, Eventbrite, etc. My friend Mary Alex is the whiz of that. She can share anything you want to know about that. Your marketing language. Are you using words when you talk about disability that are inclusive and accessible? Because at the end of the day, my friends, I'm not a medical condition, nor are other people with disabilities. We're people, and we want that language to target us as any individual in society who wants to participate. I know sometimes this may feel a little daunting, but the best thing you can do is train your staff and volunteers before an event occurs. We do it all the time. That's one of the things I will tell you. Mary Alex is an expert on with our events coordinator, Alyssa. They do a great job. I cannot tell you how many events we've had in the past few months where before the event and the day of, we're having dialogue and training. Why? Because you can't expect everyone who helps out with an event to automatically have the knowledge that you might regarding accessibility and disability integration and inclusion, because that's your wheelhouse or what you do. So it's really important to offer that staff training and guidance. And if that's something y'all need some help or support with, please reach out to Mary after the training. And I know she can get you connected with either Mary Alex, or I know we have suggestions for that because we do it all the time. And lastly, your performance content. You have control over what you choose to put in your program and event, and you have control to ensure from the planning stage to the implementation stage that it is accessible and inclusive. And so I want to make sure that everyone know that that's inclusive and accessible, that you can do that. I think I talked about it at the last training. I talked about the difference between planning with accessibility and providing reasonable accommodations. When you plan with universal design and accessibility in mind, you are being proactive. That means you are taking account for that from the get-go. When you're providing reasonable accommodations, that's more of a reactive thing because your event isn't accessible and you're having to provide the support so someone can participate. So it's really better for all of us, especially with any kind of content, that we're doing universal design and accessibility from the get-go and being very proactive in planning. And you all can do that. I've gotten to work with y'all on several of these trainings and office hours, and you have great ideas. And I think that's wonderful.
And Dori, I'm going to jump in real quick here and just make a quick note on registration forms. We've only got a couple of examples, but another registration form that we use often through our programs here at ABLE is JOT form. It can be made accessible for folks to apply, but if you're not sure if the registration platform you're using is accessible, feel free to reach out. We can look into that, and we can help you find ways to look into it too to make sure that your registration platforms are accessible for your programs.
Thanks, Wendy, for letting me know. I had my thing on Do Not Disturb, but for some reason, good old team just I reset it a second time. We'll hope it stays locked in. All right, you ready, Mary? I'm ready to talk about language. Woohoo! Because language matters, my friends. I talked about how do we make people feel welcome and included and as though they belong. We talked, there's a language, two types of language, person first language versus identity first language. And person first language puts the individual first and their disability as secondary. So I'm Dori, I'm a person with a developmental disability. That means my disability is one aspect of me, but at the end of the day, I'm a human being, person first. The other type of language, which is called identity first language, which a lot of us with disabilities like to use too. It was created by our disability community. nationwide and worldwide. And what that type of language does is pivot, and it puts our disability at the forefront because it's one aspect of us that we are proud to own. It is an identity of ours that we're proud to show. We have self-esteem with and confidence with. I can share with y'all personally, I think I did at the Disability 101 training way back, that for me, I use both. It depends on the situation I am in. I am very proud to be a member of the disability community, but sometimes when I'm working with community organizations like all of you are from, and your mission is to serve the community and all individuals, that I'm trying to show you all that people with disabilities are one member of those people that you serve. So both are equally important. There will be people in the disability community that will let you know which language they prefer, and it's always good to honor people's choices because it is related to their identities. All right. Woohoo! Next slide. So we're going to give you all some examples of words that I say stay away from. They can lead to sticky situations that none of us want to be in. So people with disabilities, that's what we should say. We're not differently abled, special needs, or handicapable. And people ask me that all the time. Why not? Special needs was created by the education community, and for about over 15 years, the disability community has asked the education community nationally and internationally to get rid of that word because our needs are no more special than anyone else's, for one. Secondly, it goes back to the days when you hear the word special. It goes back to the days when people with disabilities were excluded into separate classrooms. We were segregated. For some people, that could have led to abuse and other situations, so it can have some trauma associated with it. And ultimately, I have had so many people with disabilities for trainings that I do in the state, nationally, and internationally, share that there's a lot of stigma around that word because our needs are no more special than anyone else's. We just have supports that we use or accommodations to be successful in participating in events or working or accessing community services. Differently abled, what that word does is make the assumption that our abilities are different than non-disabled people. And I'm here to share with you, and I want y'all to have a good laugh. It's supposed to be lighthearted a little bit here too. I don't read minds. I don't levitate. I don't fly. So I don't have any abilities that are any different than anyone else's. Now, I'm a good public speaker. I love people and networking. So those are the same abilities everyone else has. I may use non-traditional methods or strategies to carry them out. So people with disabilities, stay away from euphemism is what we're trying to share with y'all. People who are blind or people with low vision, we want to emphasize they're people. Sometimes people might use identity first language and identify themselves with a community as part of their identity, like the blind community, the deaf community, the developmental disability or autism community. But really, it's better to see people. We also would say people with learning and intellectual disabilities, and we don't want to be calling people any words like slow, dumb. I'm going to use the R word only for educational purposes, retarded, staying away from other words like crazy, psycho, insane, and we use the words people with psychiatric disabilities. And we try to focus again on people. And And I think just really thinking about that, how are we phrasing? And if you're not sure about something, please feel free to reach out to our organization. We're always happy to share our disability terminology handout that we give out that was created nationally, and we adapted it in a form that makes it easier to read, and it also gives the historical connotations as to why some words are outdated and we shouldn't use them anymore. All right. Any questions so far? We know it's a lot of information. Any questions? All right, let's go to the next slide, my friend. So, what are some potential barriers that could exist with spaces when we're trying to look at a location to rent or borrow? Okay, it could be, or even pay for, steps with no ramps. If we don't have an elevator, but we're going to have an event on the second floor and there's no other way to get up there. The one that always gets me, friends, is heavy doors. And if you don't have control over the heavy doors, what can you do? You could put a sign out there with someone's cell number to call that someone could open the door. You could leave them open if they have the option to leave it open and the weather's good. Woohoo! Inaccessible bathrooms. I know that one really well. I've decided I could do a handbook on where not to go to the bathroom around our state because I do a lot of presentations statewide. But inaccessible bathrooms, y'all, could include the doors to the bathroom, the toilets and sinks not being accessible, no grab bars. There's a lot of facets. The soap dispenser is up too high and people can't reach it, or the towels. My favorite last week, y'all, somebody hung the toilet paper up really high. Like, I think they thought it would make it more accessible, but once you're sitting on the toilet, you couldn't reach it. So it was a good effort, but still not able to reach it. No American Sign Language interpreters for events. If you don't have captioning on videos or CART, which is more accessibility that has words on the bottom of the screen for meetings and events. Harsh lights or sound. I know for me with my disability, I always appreciate when I go to the Kroger Center or I went to the Philharmonic and they let you know ahead of the performance when there's going to be strobe lights or there's going to be loud banging noises. And as a person myself who typically, if I have to, I can tolerate it, but it will help me to know in advance it's coming. The strobe lights, not so much. That's something I do need to know ahead of time to avoid or know when it's coming up. Unwelcoming attitudes, that's probably the biggest one. And what do we mean by that? I request ahead of time, or somebody else with a disability requests ahead of time, or the day of the event, an accommodation, and somebody responds with, we don't do that. That's not something we can do. We don't make those types of changes, or we're not willing to do that. I have a phrase I like to use. Just because we've always done it one way doesn't mean it's the right way, and doesn't mean it's accessible for everybody. We may do things for years a certain way. That doesn't mean that we as organizations or we as a community can't adapt to meet everybody's needs. I'm not even just talking about people with disabilities. I mean everyone's needs, no matter who you are, so that you feel comfortable to participate. All right, next slide. So there is a checklist, and I know we've talked about it at a couple of different trainings that Mary did. I talked about it at a couple of mine, but the Department of Justice checklist for readily achievable barrier removal. And that's the wording they use. What it means is, what can you remove that's easily done and achievable? And if you can't do it right today, how can you make a plan to do that within the next 6 months, year, 2 years? So everybody's coming up with their plan. And that's what I was talking about in the beginning. How do we be proactive and plan ahead? So it might be around accessible entrances into the facility or exits or to the bathroom. Might be being able to access those goods and services. So that could include your tickets. That could include any merchandise. That could include programs. If you're at an event where they sell snacks, and as one of the young adults told me last week, I love the swag we got at Advocacy Day. They were talking about the t-shirts and programs and fans. That's an event we do. And that it was accessible where they could get it themselves, and how important that was to them. And then any other measures that you might have to think about. Maybe it's thinking about the seating. If they don't already have accessible seating, how can you implement some of your own with the space that you have? If they don't, or they only have 1 or 2 accessible parking spots, what can you do easily on your own? We've had to do that at a few events, because sometimes the spaces we borrow only have 2 or 3 spots, and sometimes only 1, or they only have accessible parking spaces that are made for typical cars and not vans or SUVs where the ramps have to come out from the side, and you need what's called the hash marks. Those are those lines that you see on the ground, and they have to be a certain measurement to be what's considered a van accessible parking spot. So easy things you can do. We have cones that we put out, and we measure to make sure they're compliant with what the ADA would require. Maybe you borrow cones from someone. Maybe you borrow seats. I've gone to several events where in some of our theaters around town, they had a couple accessible spots put in the venue, but they want more than 2 people with disabilities to be able to attend who use assistive technology devices like wheelchairs, scooters, rollators, etc. So they implemented where they purchased or borrowed regular chairs and then leave enough space that you would measure out for a wheelchair or other assistive technology device to sit next to them. I loved it. My husband and I went to the Philharmonic and got to sit together because they were able to put seating in, and that's just, it makes the experience so much better. You want to plan for more than one person with a disability to show up. All right, next slide. You ready? My favorite. Ask before you read. I love a good checklist. I'm a planner. I have a plan A, B, C, D, E. Makes me feel better. And a lot of you are probably like that too. And we even gave the website at the bottom so you could look at the ones that already exist. But it walks you through, does the venue or space have accessible entrances? Are they compliant accessible entrances? Because I'll be honest with you, sometimes people just put the wheelchair symbol on it, the universal design emblem of disability. And that doesn't mean it's indeed accessible. So you want to check it out. You want to do the measurements through the checklist to make sure it is accessible. Are the bathrooms accessible? Is the lighting too sharp or abrupt? Is the acoustics, are they the right sound format for people with hearing disabilities, for people with developmental and speech and communication disabilities? That's really important. Are there emergency exits with flashing lights for people who are deaf or hard of hearing? That's important. If we know that there is going to be an emergency, some people who have sensory disabilities like autism may request of you, and I had this recently, someone talked to me about this. They wanted to be where they could see it was an emergency, but they wanted to ensure they weren't sitting right under the emergency exit light alarm, because the alarm being so loud would have, in their words, not mine, their words, triggered their autism and made it a very bad experience for them. And so we talked about, how do you advocate with the organization to help you meet those needs? Could you have noise canceling headphones? If you have noise canceling headphones, though, can you still see if that light flashes? If you're sitting somewhere where you can't, that's going to be not a good thing, because you wouldn't know an emergency is taking place. Service animal policies. Y'all know this is one that's near and dear to my heart, because I have a service animal. So do you have a policy about where I'm going to be able to sit, making sure I'm not having my dog in the aisleway where somebody might get hurt because it doesn't have enough space, because they might trip accidentally. Is there a policy about where my service animal, they may have to go to the bathroom? Is there a certain space on the property where my service animal would need to relieve itself, etc.? There's a whole bunch we could go into. And then accessible parking, and I mentioned some of those, and thinking about the alternatives if a space that you all borrow or rent doesn't have many accessible parking spaces, or van accessible, what you can do. And we can give you more ideas. That's what we're here for. We're here to be a resource and help you. All right, next slide. My favorite, talk to the landlord. Woohoo! Because you can advocate for access when you do that. When you're having that conversation with the owner or landlord, when you're renting, purchasing, borrowing a space, it's important to share why it matters, because we all have a responsibility to educate when we do the work we do. Sharing with them, this is important because we want all people in our community to be able to participate. Ask what they can do to help. We've worked with venues and places where they're like, we can do this for you. We're willing to do this. But if you never ask, how do you know? Offer resources. And if y'all need help with some of that, let us know. We can give you some resources on places to look at, places to borrow equipment, places with accessible stages, all kinds of great things. And then a space can't get better and improve if we don't suggest to them ways that they can make their venues more accessible and more accommodating to all people. I can't tell you how many times, I know Mary, Alex, and Alyssa have done it. Mary does it. I do it because I'm not shy, y'all. If I go to a conference, I go to a training event, and it's not accessible, I give feedback after, and it's not for me per se. It's because of all the other organizations like yourselves who are going to want to use that space. And I want you to be able to have as many people at that event as possible. So I'll say to them, have you thought about making the stage accessible? Have you thought about having an accessible podium for the guest speakers, or if it's a performance? Oftentimes people want to give me a certain type of mic, and the microphone will be affixed to the table or podium, and I'm in a wheelchair and I can't, number one, get up to it because the height, or it's blocking me. So I'll come in front of it so the audience can see me, or even I'll ask for a mic that comes off of the stand. And these are just easy changes that don't cost a lot of money, that venues can adapt, can implement, and it only makes it better for all people. Because somebody said to me recently, you made a suggestion at an event a year ago, and we decided to implement it for our upcoming program. And they said, I didn't know at the time that I was going to have a surgery because they're a non disabled person. And they said, guess what? I needed to be able to use those accommodations temporarily since I'm one of the hosts of the event. So you never know how your changes and suggestions can impact lots of people. All right. All right.
Okie dokie.
I think this is you.
This is me. Yep. Hey, everybody. Mary Alex here with Able. Dory's gone through a lot of the first bit, but I'm going to get you through the part of, oh no, the checklist doesn't look so good now. What do we do? And this is something that we deal with a lot at Able when we rent facilities to have various events and things. Dory's mentioned my coworker Alyssa, and I will go into a venue, we'll do a walkthrough, we'll ask the person that we're renting from, what changes can we make? And then at that point, we're looking at that checklist and we're thinking, okay, what can we do to take it like, the steps further to make sure that our program is fully accessible that we're going to be having in this venue. All right. So first, providing information to allow for planning. You need to think about what you want to know before you visit a new place and then transition to thinking about this from alternative perspectives. So think about what it is that your program is going to require when you're headed into a space. For folks with mobility disabilities, you're going to need to think about where are the restrooms? Are the restrooms themselves accessible? Where is the parking? Is it far away? Is it in a gravel lot? And is there an accessible entrance to the facility? For folks who are deaf or hard of hearing, consider if there's going to be interpreters or some form of captioning. For folks who are blind and low vision, make sure that you're providing audio descriptions for your program and what's occurring, and make sure that your digital documents that you're going to be providing are accessible. And then for neurodivergent folks, you might want to consider a sensory room or break space. Loud sounds or bright colors, is that going to be something that's associated? Again, that break space could be incredibly useful for getting away for a moment. Busy, less busy times to visit your facility or venue that maybe you could potentially advertise. You don't have to have separated specific times for folks. You could say, this is a really busy time in our venue, or this is a time where we plan to turn down the sounds and lights. You don't have to advertise them as, this is the time for folks with this specific type of disability to attend my program. Information for disability support. So be explicit about your accessibility arrangements to help people feel included. For example, you can say that personal care assistant or PCA or companions are welcome to join folks to your program, to your event. Guide dogs and assistance dogs are welcome. You could say it's okay to leave and re-enter the venue as needed. Consider maybe getting a wristband or something if that's something you need to be able to keep track with for people to leave and re-enter. Ask for accommodation needs and requests in registrations or emails. And I mentioned this in the chat. A lot of the things that we're talking about are things that we like to call have the curb cut effect, which if you haven't heard of it before, the concept is that when curb cuts became a legal requirement for accessible pathways, everybody actually benefited, not just wheelchair users, young parents with strollers, as I mentioned in the chat, or folks who maybe are aging into a disability and having that step up was just a little more difficult for them, and a curb is much more useful. Asking for people's accommodation needs and requests in advance really allows for them to be in control of what it is that they need and what they need to experience. Similarly, again, personal note, I've been pregnant a couple of times. I've attended meetings where the only thing that was being served for lunch was deli meat, and that is not something you're supposed to eat when you're pregnant. But nobody asked me in advance or in a registration, is there something that they needed to do to accommodate my dietary restriction during that time? The asking is absolutely the best way to know what you should provide, and it provides the best experience for folks who are going to be participating in your programs. Okay, again, talking about planning, travel. Send out travel and parking information with directions on how you reach your venue for major routes, car, bus, etc. For some folks, preparation of travel arrangements could be really crucial. So you need to think about the following questions. Is there accessible parking? And if so, how many spaces are there? Do people need to book parking in advance? What evidence, if any, do they need? For example, do they need to have a specific type of placard or something else? How far is the parking to the venue itself? What is the most accessible space for a drop off for maybe Uber, Lyft, a taxi, even potentially a bus or a large van? How accessible is the nearest bus stop and the route from there to the venue itself? Um, Again, uh, in addition to just thinking about the physicality of parking and transportation, folks who may experience things like anxiety, having a predetermined plan about what it is that they need to do for parking when they arrive, especially if they're going to an unfamiliar place or driving in an unfamiliar area, can be really assistive to their needs. All right, venue information. So sending out venue access information and facility information in advance, crucial, crucial, crucial. For some users, knowing that there will be required, knowing that there will be their required facilities at the venue might be crucial for them. So aim for information from the following list. Make sure to have accurate and detailed descriptions of the venue. List if there's going to be a designated quiet room or respite space. Make sure that you note whether or not you're going to be providing refreshments or if folks can bring their own into all spaces or just some. Also, if you're going to be providing any food, be sure to indicate whether or not you're going to have plenty of options that are allergen friendly, or if you anticipate that some of the foods that you're supplying might have allergens in them. Of course, recommendation is to go for allergen friendly foods all the way. Storage facilities for any medications or equipment that folks might be bringing with them. Where's the nearest accessible bathroom, changing place, gender neutral restrooms? Will there be any wait lines or for access to the venue? And if there is going to be a wait, is there a way that folks can avoid that line, avoid standing for prolonged periods of time or waiting for prolonged periods of time? So just considering for those who might have difficulty standing, etc. Like a buzzer is always great for that. Is seating available in foyer spaces? Are there low tables for buffets? One thing that is extremely frustrating is going to a party or going to somewhere and the food's up high on a bar. And now you have to get somebody to come and get all your stuff for you because it's up above where you can reach it. Or it's only cocktail tables that are at full standing height throughout the entire venue. And now you're trying to have a conversation with your friends, but they're inadvertently leaving you out because they're standing around this standing table and you're in your wheelchair or you're a person of short stature and you can't reach it. And again, all of these great for folks like myself who experience anxiety to know exactly what to expect in advance. Before I jump into this, I do want to make another just kind of note about having those planning materials in advance for travel, for what to expect when you get to the venue. I have been planning and managing events for all sizes for, gosh, almost 15 years now. Before working at Able, South Carolina, I was responsible for hosting festivals and events that would be from the hundreds to tens of thousands of individuals. And the key to success for each of these was providing as much information as possible before somebody arrived. That way, we were avoiding any issues, we were avoiding any calamities or any critical issues that could come up because we were providing people with the needed information. Especially if you're hosting any type of events or occasions where you might be outside in the elements, making sure you prepare people with the right type of outfitting to wear. For example, let's say you're hosting some kind of arts related Juneteenth event. Really fun, really exciting, probably outside in an extremely hot and relatively dangerous time of year for lots of folks. So reminding people to wear sunscreen, hats, protective gear, make sure to hydrate, make sure that they know where hydration stations are. Consider whether or not your hydration station is accessible. Is there a way for people to refill that doesn't require a use of their hands that would be like turning a knob as opposed to a lever or something? Lots of little things. All right. Some portable tools that can improve physical access to a space that you may have rented could be folding ramps, things that you can bring with you and then you can take, captioning apps, or working with a captioner that could provide a unique URL that folks who have their own captioning devices could access, braille menus, chairs with arms, staff scripts, portable adjustable podium. Pro tip, a music stand is a portable adjustable podium. It works fantastically. We used a music stand for many, many years, and we'll be coming back at future Advocacy Day events for Able, South Carolina. But all of these are easy, quick things that you can bring with you to make sure that the space in the venue that you're using is accessible to everyone. So a couple notes on tools for communication access. Offer ASL interpreters and make sure, when you're doing that pre-event registration, if somebody asks for ASL, that you're providing the appropriate ASL interpreter for your event and use a licensed service. There are lots of folks out there who genuinely want to give back to the community by providing ASL interpretation, but they may not actually be qualified. So be sure to go and use a licensed service as opposed to a volunteer. Use captions, provide alt text and image descriptions, accessible communications. These are things that we've reviewed in previous presentations with you guys, but don't forget about what is required of your marketing, social media, flyers, and registration to ensure accessibility. And then pre-event communications, make sure you give plenty of space and time to allow people to be able to set their plans. Not everybody has a family car that they can just jump in and drive away to get to your event. They may need adequate time to book transportation of one form or another, or plan their bus route, or however it is that they're going to get to your facility, et cetera, et cetera. And then make sure that you have these different types of information on your website. Don't gatekeep. If it is something that you're talking about that you think somebody, regardless of disability status or whatever, may need to be able to appropriately access your event, put it on your website. Have just a quick download PDF where people can find all of this information. If it's something that maybe you don't want to have on the super public facing side because it's not going to really work with some of the other information that you're communicating, you can have a separate page, separate PDF with some of the details about what it is that can help somebody access your site or your venue for your event or your program. Okie dokie. So I know some of this has been gone over before, but just a quick review on accessible images and what we mean when we talk about that. So alt text, that is just short for alternative text. The purpose of it is to describe visual content and information. It's primarily for folks who are blind or low vision, who are using some type of screen reader technology. You should use it for anything visual. So graphics, GIFs, however you want to pronounce it, tables, charts, but something visual that you're going to be publishing in a digital format, it should have alternative text. There is a difference between alt text and image description. Alt text is shorter and coded. It's read by screen reader technology, and it's usually 125 characters or less. Think a short tweet. Whereas image description, often longer within the post or the caption. Perhaps even if you're printing something, maybe you have an image and you have a brief description underneath it in the caption section. But ultimately, image description benefits everyone, not just folks who are screen reader users. We have on this page some notes on where you would find alt text, where to add alt text on different social media platforms. I'm not going to go through every individual one here, but there are options across all social media platforms, whether you're on the desktop version or in an app version, all Meta products, so Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, also known as X, and LinkedIn as well. TikTok, because it's a video app, alt text technically does not apply. However, there are ways that you can make your videos accessible. But there is a way for you to edit and add alt text to all of these platforms. Oh, and before I forget, all of these platforms also offer automatically generated alt text when you upload an image. However, I want to warn that AI is not as good as you are. It doesn't always get it right. It may not be able to read the text and what it is that you've uploaded, or it may really just get the image completely wrong. I will say it's getting better and better. And so if you want to give AI the opportunity to provide automatically generated alt text that you then edit, you certainly can do that. But I do highly recommend checking the alt text before publishing or double checking it after it's published to make sure that it is accurate. I recently shared with a different group that we were doing a similar presentation for of an example. It was like a child at the beach, and they were sitting on one of those skim boards, and the AI for Meta had assumed it was a stack of strawberry pancakes. And that is clearly two very different things. So always good to double check. A note on colors and fonts. You want to make sure your documents and web pages use high contrast colors such as black and white. We've got a little chart on the right side here with good examples on the right and bad, almost unable to read examples on the left. But be sure that you're careful with your blues and your greens because that text could be really difficult for folks who are colorblind to be able to read. Make sure that your fonts are large enough to be read easily. 18-point font or larger is what's recommended for things like presentations like we're looking at now or other graphics. And then 16-point and even 14-point font can potentially be all right for when you're sending message communications. But really anything smaller than that, you're going to be running into some difficulty for folks. We highly recommend using sans serif fonts, which are like some of the ones that are pictured here, but we have a list: Tahoma, Calibri, Helvetica, Arial, I can never say this one right, Verdana, are all sans serif fonts. Times New Roman technically does have serifs. It has what we call the little feet, where it has like those little kind of cutesy marks. But Times New Roman is considered a accessible font. If you're not sure, there are many resources. We have a resource list at the end of this where you can test your font to make sure that it is accessible to the folks who will be using it. Slab serif fonts that are accessible include Arvo, Museo Slab, and Rockwell. And those are usually what you would use for, say, let's say headings or something bold rather than the body of the text. All right, I'm going to take a quick pause and see if there are any questions that anyone may have. Still got some stuff to go through, so. Wendy says none. Trust Wendy. All right. So a couple of notes on sensory considerations. Maybe you want to offer designated quiet hours or quieter hours, or have a designated quiet or respite space. Even thinking beyond, again, curb cut effect, thinking beyond individuals with specific disabilities, these types of spaces could be really helpful for Lo, the overstimulated mom that is partially reading this presentation right now, or maybe somebody who has got a lot of folks with them and they just need a place to take a break. They're tired, they need to rest. Something to consider is dim lighting wherever it can be applied. Perhaps having headphone zones or sensory kits, making it okay for folks to come in with headphones that they've already brought themselves. And then content warnings, include that in your marketing and social media. I want to share something kind of embarrassing as a parent that happened to me recently, because the content warning was not good enough for an experience that I had. I have a 5-year-old and a almost 2-year-old, and we were trying to spend some time in the Charleston area before we had an appointment, and it was raining, and we went to Patriots Point, which, if you're familiar with that, that is the big aircraft carrier Yorktown that has been converted into a museum. Big airplanes, things for my little boy who's obsessed with planes and wheels to look at. It was great. After the rain stopped, they had this new section I hadn't seen called the Vietnam Experience, and we went and looked at it. Really neat. But there was this kind of tented space that invited you to go in and close the door behind you because then it would play some type of simulation. And then, so we went in, we didn't know, and we sat down and it gets dark. And then on the screen, it just says it on the screen. There's no speaking. So my child who can't read doesn't know what it says. You're about to see what is essentially going to look like an ambush on some folks in a war zone. And before we could really react to what was happening, there's just this gun noise and these booms and this shaking, and my 5-year-old is screaming and my 2-year-old is crying. And we got out of there as fast as we could. But there was no content warning, and there was not an appropriate amount of time for us to react. Is this appropriate for my 5 and 2-year-old to witness without really understanding what war even means? So that would be an example. Don't worry, I talked to the folks there and asked that they do something different. At least have a sign on the door for those types of things. I will say, prior to entering that full exhibit, there was a sign that did indicate that it may not be great for folks who experience certain types of disabilities related to PTSD. But again, 5 and 2-year-old wasn't really thinking about that. All right, enough for story time. All right, some tips for marketing access. Be sure to show access in your ads. Use symbols like the international symbol for accessibility. We also call them Bob, which is the little person in the wheelchair. Make sure to indicate whether or not you're having ASL. Assign and advertise an accommodation contact. You can use inclusive images, so images that would include people with visual and even or visible and even invisible disabilities. And point to an accessibility page where people can get information and plan ahead. I mentioned previously, I've done festival events management for many years. At my previous job, we would host these monthly movie nights in the park, really fun, nice events. And right before I left that position, I had a family reach out and they asked if closed captioning could be on for the movie when they came because an individual in their family is deaf. Easy enough. We turned it on, and from that point on, we decided as an organization, we're always going to have closed captioning on it every single movie, regardless of whether or not somebody asked. But that's just an example of having the right contact for somebody to get in touch with to ask for their needs to make sure they can have an enjoyable time. Okie dokie. Let's talk a little bit about plain language real quick. So plain language just makes information clear, welcoming, easy to understand. Everybody benefits from it. So a couple of tips when writing things to ensure that you're using plain language. Make sure you know your audience. Use everyday language. Consider using personal pronouns like you, help put the person you're talking to right in the spot. Avoid slang terms. Slang can be incredibly confusing, not just for folks with disabilities, but for folks who maybe English as a not their first language. But also slang can be confusing generationally. It can mean different things at different points in generational history. I'm going to use an example that happened in our office a few months ago. This is really so silly. In a Teams chat, we have an office-wide Teams chat, and a member of our staff who, let's just say, is over middle-aged, put in the Teams chat, I am going to be out of pocket for the next 3 hours. To them and to other folks kind of in the same age range as them or even a little younger, that meant I am going to be unavailable for the next 3 hours. But to folks on our staff who were younger, that meant I am going to be out of my mind for the next 3 hours because out of pocket meant something completely different to them. So again, interesting note on how slang can be interpreted differently by many different people. Write short and logical sentences, leave out details that might distract your reader, avoid undefined technical terms. You can use technical terms, but you have to define them. Be direct, do not be wordy. Use headings, subheadings, margins, white space, bullet points, things that help you organize your information so it's easy to follow along. Make information easy to find. How terrible it would be for you to work on something so hard and somebody not be able to find it. So make it easy for folks to find. Use words with fewer syllables and keep wording between a third and fifth grade reading level. Oh, that slang term. Yes. And I want to make another note on that slang term that I just witnessed. It mentioned it wasn't just a divide between age and staff. It was also different interpretation based on races as well. So it just showed different community differences and background differences. So if you're going to use slang, probably a good idea to at least define it, consider it a technical term, perhaps. All right, budgeting for access. So you're going to want to include this early when you're preparing for your event, when you're preparing to move into a rental space. Consider it as a line item in your grants application. You're going to make sure that your facility, your space, your program is accessible. Have dedicated funds. Fundraise for accessibility. Something that people honestly can really get behind is the idea that we're not leaving folks with disabilities behind when you are explicit about why it is that you're advertising for fundraising to encourage accessibility. Ask patrons and customers. Asking them is the best way to know what is needed and to start budgeting for it. And honestly, be open and communicative about how you're planning to budget for it because it is possible that you may find a donor in that conversation. Okay. Write an accessibility statement right there. That is a great way for folks to know that you are seeking to be as accessible as possible. So we have an example here of the accessibility statement that we have on a few of our websites, actually. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but it starts out saying we strive to ensure that anybody with or without disabilities can use our website, use our programs, without hindrance. We've designed it with accessibility in mind. Be aware that efforts are ongoing. This is you reminding folks that accessibility is a process that continues and changes every day, right? If you do encounter an issue or have specific questions or you need accommodations, et cetera, we've got contact information on here. And then in your correspondence, specify what it is that you're having issue with. Easy, great way for folks to know that you're ensuring accessibility is at the core of your values. Okie dokie. But just a
Yeah.
reminder, and Dori, I'm gonna pitch it back over to you for this, that access is ongoing. I'm gonna let Dori take a second to really talk about this and break it down because I know we just gave you guys a bunch of information. But it is very much a practice, not just a checkbox. So Dori, I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. Anybody have any questions or just thoughts that are coming to your mind? We want to give you the chance to process and ask anything before I move on to this section. Does anybody have any thoughts or anything coming to your mind as you're thinking about all of this? Great. Well, thanks, Wendy. We just want you all to know that number one, don't panic. We know it can feel a little daunting and overwhelming in the beginning, but don't panic. Take a deep breath. We just want you to realize that ensuring accessibility and access, it really is just, as I tell the community, it's practice, practice, practice. It's an ongoing effort. And when you're willing to keep learning and keep improving, it only makes the process easier for you. It makes it more, I think, for people with disabilities wanting to come to your events, it makes it inviting. And so be willing to learn from the people that you want to come as well. I give suggestions all the time in a social situation because that's really important. And the only reason I said that door prop, Gretchen, is some buildings won't allow you to put like a piece of wood or a doorstop in. So having that option to call somebody by just taping a 8.5, 11 sheet of paper on really makes a difference. Um, and sometimes people will say to you, I've made recommendations to different venues and arts mediums too, just to help. So if someone makes a recommendation, take it in the what I would say the idea of how it's meant, which is to help people improve. Because ultimately, that's all most people want, is so that everybody can participate. So let's go to the next slide. We all know, hey, we at Able South Carolina have made mistakes. Mistakes are a part of life. When you're human, it's okay. So what do you do when you make a mistake? Just say you're sorry. You don't need to belabor it. Just say, we are sorry. We want to learn and we are going to pivot and do better. And that's all you can do. And remind yourself that inclusion is a process. That means it's something you work at every day. We at Able often say it's not a destination. People think it's like a destination, like this big thing that we all want to get to. The reality is it's a process that you take lots of different little steps to get there. And that's okay. And where sometimes there are hiccups, you just keep going and you try and you learn from that and you work to make that adjustment the next time you do it. Or maybe somebody comes to an event, it wasn't fully accessible to them. Asking for that input from them shows that you care. It shows that you want to do better. So just saying something like, we are sorry to hear that. We want to do better. Can you give us some thoughts on what would have made the experience better for you? Because we truly want to do better and we want to implement changes that will make it more inclusive for everybody and accessible. All right, next slide. I'm all about the celebration. Y'all know that. I'm a big woohooer. Woohoo! Because we want to celebrate the changes that we make. Even one little thing can really improve for everybody else. Sometimes we all get focused as human beings on what we do wrong instead of what we're doing right. So be willing to celebrate those wins and keep going with it. I will tell you, we held an event a couple of weeks ago and we had a difficulty with one aspect of it, but the rest of it was phenomenal. And all I heard from the community was the phenomenal parts. And, you know, people mentioned the one hiccup that we had, which wasn't because of us, it was because of someone who wasn't prepared to implement something. And yet, what did they do? What can we do to make it better? What can we do to fix this? They were willing to hear from us and the community. That's what it's all about. And then you share with the community what you've done to make it more accessible. Not in a bragging way, but you say, you know, we want everybody to be included. We want everybody to belong and we want everybody to feel comfortable. So these are some of the things that we've been working on and have implemented. And when you share what you've learned and when you make a mistake, that shows people too that we are willing to learn, we are willing to hear from our community, and we're willing to strive to make improvements. And that is just so essential. I think people want to know that you're making the effort. A lot of times people ask me when I do events and we're working on accessibility, why am I taking pictures? Well, one of it's from my friend Mary Alex, so she can let the community know. And the other thing is to show people with disabilities the community cares and wants to make things accessible and inclusive to them. And when the community sees that we're all working together, everybody benefits. Because you may think, well, it's just people who formally say they have disabilities. But how often when I've worked with someone to make an accommodation, have I heard, well, guess what? Someone from the aging community said that benefited them. Somebody who is a mom like Mary Alex with kids and strollers and equipment and all kinds of things like that share, well, you know what? That curb cut or that ramp helped me as I was trying to get my family into those seats. I've heard from people who had temporary needs. They had a surgery or they broke an arm or a leg or another body part. You know, I typically don't need the accessible seats, but guess what? I did. I wasn't expecting to have this happen when we bought the tickets to come. So at the end of the day, everybody benefits when we all work together to show what we learned, what we've improved upon, and what we're offering the community. Next slide. Thanks, Mary. All right, y'all ready to talk real life examples? Because we have this picture because you know what it's like. Sometimes we can be in the weeds trying to figure it all out. So now we want to help make it a little more concrete. All right.
Okay. All right, so we'll go with the first example here, local theater. They asked the landlord for a ramp to make sure that spaces and the entrance was accessible. They added ASL interpreters at opening night for each show, advertised it in advance. And then they began recruiting disabled actors that, folks from the community that represent the community. I know y'all have heard this before from our group, but 1 in 3 South Carolinians has a disability. And when you're talking about a local theater and having folks represent your community, absolutely wonderful to recruit disabled actors that represent those 1 in 3 individuals in the community. A quick note, adding ASL interpreters at opening night for show and advertising it. There is a different group that we were working with recently. I don't want to call them out entirely, but they were a local movie theater. And they were having screenings regularly with open captions, which means that everybody can see the caption that attend. They had it listed when you would go out of your way to look for the specific movie that you were interested in and click on the time, but they weren't otherwise advertising that they had special open caption days. And they were doing these on a regular repeat occurrence. It was like the first Monday of every month or something. And when we pointed that out, they realized they were missing a major marketing opportunity. So again, important to advertise the accessibility that you are implementing. All right, Dori, I'll let you take this one.
I love this one. Community choir. They realized that people with disabilities wanted to be a part of the event. So they changed their rehearsal space to an accessible location. They purposefully did that because they knew they wanted their choir to be open to anyone who wanted to participate. They invested in what we call a sound field system for one member, which helped amplify the sound, helped target it to that individual, and that allowed that individual to thrive and be a part of the choir. They also, instead of just assuming who had disabilities in the group, they decided before they even got started practicing for the event to have an open discussion as a group and talked about the importance of access and accessibility for all of the members. How great would that be if we did that more as organizations, as businesses? Sometimes we're always targeting our patrons, but we lose sight of the people in our actual groups, businesses, and organizations. So having a discussion, and here's how you have it. Are y'all ready? Everybody thinks it's going to be a targeted discussion about disability. It's not. Here's what it looks like. Hi, I'm Dori. I am so excited to be a part of this group, and I know we are all working toward the same goal that everybody can participate. I thought it might be a great idea if all of us were to discuss what's at least one thing that would help us to feel supported in participating. Or you could say, what supports do each of us need to make us be able to feel comfortable and successful in participating? Mary Alex might say, I need post-it notes with reminders of when I need to do my particular activity. Somebody else might say, I need a chair up at the front so I can hear what everybody's saying. Other people might say, I might need an email reminder of when the rehearsals are or when the practice sessions are, etc. Every single person in a group, organization, business needs support. Some people just have more formalized supports, which are called reasonable accommodations, but I guarantee you that everybody needs some kind of support. Somebody in that group might say, I need to carpool because my husband and I have different things going on with our kids, and so I need to ride with somebody else. Another person might say, I'm somebody who likes a good snack. Could we have a sign up session to bring snacks? There's a whole bunch of reasons people like a variety of supports, but that opens up the discussion, number one, for everybody to feel comfortable with each other and to develop rapport. Number two, it makes support the norm, not something that only certain people need. Because every single person I know needs support of one type or another. Some of us may have disabilities and use supports, but everybody uses a variety of supports in their life. And number three, what it does overall is it helps us to realize when we model the different supports that are out there that people can utilize, and the only time I use this word, y'all, normalize. It normalizes disability, it normalizes inclusion, and it normalizes accessibility as a whole. And so that's really important to be able to have those discussions. And lastly, they added large print scores to their singing and their performance program. So what that is like music sheets with large print on them, for those who aren't familiar with that word. So this is another great example of accessibility, accommodation, and making supports the norm for everybody.
And before we go to the next slide, because this is an arts-focused group, when we're talking about how everyone needs supports and encouraging folks to share their supports, perhaps in the time when somebody's mentioning a support, you may discover that there is a support that somebody could have for a time, but perhaps they continue to develop whatever the artistic skill is to not need that support over time. So by having that open and fair and honest conversation, you're giving them the opportunity to be able to expand their capabilities. So like in a community choir, maybe you have somebody who just doesn't feel incredibly confident about their sight reading skills. And so they want to sit alongside somebody who has more confidence in their skills so that they can become better at it themselves. I was that person. I've done a number of community choirs and couldn't do it for the longest time, almost exclusively due to fear. But then when I was asked, what can we do to help? Found a new skill. All right, last example we have is art camp. So we've got on here having a flexible schedule or having, multiple different times in which a particular art camp theme is occurring. Having a calming tent or a space where somebody can go relax and calm down. When we hear art camp, we're probably thinking little kids. When we're thinking little kids in a art camp setting, maybe before they've gotten settled down and focused on their projects, maybe it could be a little loud or a little chaotic. That may be too much for some children. A calming tent might be a great place for one of their students to go and get reset. And then having an access coordinator, somebody who is reviewing those applications, reviewing those registrations in advance, determining based on the accommodations that people have submitted or the dietary restrictions that they had, what different things that need to be implemented during which camps. or even a parent shows up the very first day and they signed little Johnny up for art camp back in March. But in that time, we discovered little Johnny has asthma or he has a food allergy that we weren't aware of because he only just had an exposure. Or maybe he's broken his leg or something else has happened. Having that access coordinator at your first day of camp to make sure that things run smoothly and make sure that you're double checking with parents that you have access needs met can be extremely beneficial to ensuring that that student, that youth, that participant is going to have a great time and a really wonderful, memorable experience. All right, Dori, back to you.
We know. So you're all excited. You're thrilled to be here today. So, how do you sustain that energy and momentum and take what you've learned today and carry it out into your work that you do? Make sure you're building policies around access, around the events that you have, and how you're going to provide those supports and accommodations for your events. Train your new staff who are joining or your new volunteers. We like to say make access a part of your organizational DNA. Woohoo! And always engage your board of directors and your volunteers so that accessibility should not be the mantra of one person in your organization. It should be the mission of your whole organization. That includes your board of directors, it includes your volunteers, it includes your staff, and everybody affiliated with your organization and event. All right, next slide. All right, we want to know, are you ready? Because we're all about a good point of taking what we've shared with you today and bringing it all home. So we want to know from each of you, and you can either unmute yourself or put it in the chat, what's one thing you can do this month to improve access in your program? What's one thing you can do this month to improve access in your program, your event, organization? Because we know you might not be having an event tomorrow, so don't be shy. Woohoo! We want to hear from you. Adding more detailed information to parking information provided to client families prior to their first visit. Woohoo, Gretchen! Amanda said you can also check out our accessibility page to make sure it's updated and relevant. Woohoo! I hope I pronounced it right. Is it Quaja? I hope I pronounced it right. Discuss with others in our agency how to ensure we are using alt text when posting on social media. Woohoo! Wendy said, I don't facilitate programs, but speaking up and sharing my ideas and suggestions. Yay, Wendy! Woohoo! Charlene says, focus on the font used in advertisements. Yeah. All right. Anybody else think of anything else? I want to make sure I get everybody because I see we have a lot of people on. Anybody?
Dori, I've got one.
Oh, we got one too at the same time, Mary Alex.
Yeah.
Finley said, get all new staff up to date on accessibility. Woo! Go ahead, Mary Alex.
Yeah, we've got a little staff get together that we're going to be having soon in about a month, where we're planning on having this kind of picnic in the park day, and we're going to do a staff craft. And before our event, I am planning on sending out a survey to my staff, asking them what accommodations they might need. So picnic in the park might be outside. What kind of accommodations do they need to participate in an outside event? We're having a staff craft. It's Dori, you're getting a whole preview right now. You too, Mary.
Woo! I'll pretend I didn't hear. How about that?
But it's going to be one of those like paint party type things. which means, I'm going to need to get some canvases. I'm going to need to get some paints, paint brushes. But maybe I've got some staff with limb differences or a limited use of their hands that might need some type of accommodation to be able to do the painting, whether it's some type of specialized tool or something else. So I'm going to send out a survey and ask staff what their needs are going to be based on these things that we're planning on offering in their program, and then give myself plenty of time to plan for that and work with them to make sure that when they come to my event, that they have full access to the same thing as all of our other staff members.
Mary Alex, I thought about something and I was going to ask you the questions. I hope it's okay because I thought
Yeah.
people say these sorts of ideas, and so I thought you could address it. Mary Alex, we're having this outdoor event. How would we implement a quiet space?
Oh, that's a good one because we just talked about that, Doris.
Mhm.
So I will tell y'all, mild failure here that we experienced at Able recently. We had an outdoor event. It was our advocacy day at the State House, and it's pretty loud. We've got speakers going, there's people cheering, hooting, hollering, and we attempted to have a quiet space tent, but we really just put it too close to where the action was. And the feedback we got from participants was it really just didn't do what it needed to do, didn't do as advertised. So in the future, if we're at an outdoor event and we're looking to have some type of quiet space or quiet designated zone, I would look for a shaded area if you can't provide a tent over it that is far enough distance away from the sound that it wouldn't be disturbing to someone. Have just some simple signage up. Make sure that the path to that area is accessible. If there's seating, make sure accessible seating is provided. And let's say that you're going to have a tent over that space. You can have signage on that tent. Or let's say you're taking it a step further and it's going to be a quiet space and privacy area. Maybe you need to provide a tent that has walls. Another accommodation, not a disability necessarily, but an accommodation that may need to be considered is, do you have a new parent that is attending your program that might need a private space to pump because they're breastfeeding? That was something that I faced as a staff person. We had a quiet zone and privacy area. And what we did was we popped up a tent with walls. We put a small fan inside the tent because it got a little warm in there, and a table that somebody could roll up to with a wheelchair. We advertised it as a quiet space and a privacy area with a specialized reserved time for when I was going to be going into using it for my pumping needs. So that is, again, something else that you can provide based on the feedback that you get when you ask people what their accommodation needs are.
Thank you, Mary Alex. I just thought that was great because I did hearing with summer coming and late spring, everyone wants to do outdoor events. And somebody said to me, how do you do that? Would that be possible outdoors? And I was telling them about our positive and our learning experience from it. So I thought others here, being in the arts, might be having things come up with the summer coming.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
All right. Let's go to the next slide, Mary. So we have a closing thought for you. And I love this bench and I think it's really cool. It says, I'd like more time with this artwork, but all this standing is painful. Sit if you agree. I thought that was funny because they're trying to say we all know we have to move around a lot to art. But much like that, disability is not a barrier to loving the arts. And even if we don't all do things the traditional way, when we provide accessibility and we provide access, that's what removes the barriers and allows everybody who wants to participate in art to be fully participatory. Woohoo! Yay! All right. Anybody? We're gonna go to the next slide, which is questions. We'll ask questions, but we also put in a lot of resources into the PowerPoint slide. So if you all had more information, I'll let Mary Alex share some of them with you, and then we'll take questions.
Yeah, we've got a couple pages of resources here. So first is US Access Board. ADA information and technical assistance. These are a lot of things about effective communication, these first few types of auxiliary aids for effective communication. Web content accessibility guidelines, or WCAG for short. If you do a lot of our digital accessibility trainings, you're going to hear a lot about this, but they've got a lot of great information and free resources to help you ensure that what you're producing is accessible. The 2010 ADA Standards for Accessible Design. Ignite Community Art Centers has adaptive tools on loan. Kinetic Light, this is a dance troupe that features folks with various physical disabilities. Really just cool overall to get that experience and see what it is that folks can do. Ramped, recording artists and music professionals with disabilities website there. Service Animal Fact Sheet. Highly recommend reviewing that because there's a lot of goofy misinformation about service animals out there. Some plain language guidelines, learning about the ADA, questions about the ADA. A lot of these are .gov websites. Disability Impacts All of Us from the CDC. Easy Read Help. The nounproject.com has a series of free to download icons that you can use when creating easy read content, which is essentially plain language that has a visual kind of descriptive icon next to it. Also, just a quick shout out on the Noun Project, they recently released accessibility icons that are free to download. We just downloaded those ourselves for our able staff and highly recommend using those. ADA requirements of effective communication link there. Shannon Finnegan, Disability Art, National Disability Arts Collective listed, and then ADA checklist for physical barrier removal. There as well. As Dori said, we love a checklist. Checklists are great.
We loved it.
A couple of things that you can read, listen, or watch to kind of take a deep dive a little bit further. Nothing About Us Without Us, Disability Arts Now at artnews.com. Simi Linton, Invitation to Dance and Movie. Mid-Atlantic ADA Center's Stretching Dollars and Barrier Removal webinar on YouTube. And then Galen Lee, who is a disabled musician. If you've heard this name before, you may have recognized it from they won a NPR Tiny Desk concert competition, and that really kind of launched their career. But really, really cool individual musician there. But all those are fantastic resources, and there's so many more. Those are only just a few. But we have contact for our dear friend Mary Reeves, who's on the call with our access team. Should you need us or want to take a deeper dive into what it is that we've discussed today. And we also have other ways that you can stay in touch. And then we would love it if you would take a moment to tell us about this training. We've got a QR code on the screen as well as a link. But yeah, any questions? We'd love to open it up. We've got some time. Please share.
Don't everybody be so talkative at once. Who has any questions or comments?
Or do you want to run something by us that you think that you might be looking to change in a place that maybe you're renting, or a venue that you're using for an upcoming event or for an upcoming program?
While folks are thinking, Mary Alex and Dori, I will share just as a reminder to everyone that we do have our accessibility office hours tomorrow. That, if you leave this and we close out the webinar, and in 10 minutes you're like, oh my gosh, I have an idea, I have a question, that is available tomorrow. And anyone who registered should get an update for that. Yes, my contact info is right there. Thank you, Mary Alex. Wait, did you mean me, Mary, or Mary Alex? Because mine is there, but Mary Alex, will you put yours in the chat just in case, please?
Yep, I sure will. All right, that is me. We have a lot of Marys at Able.
You should see what it's like when you do a training with them all and everybody's like, Mary, Mary.
If you're in a meeting with the 3 Marys, and then we also have a Mandy, I'm so sorry. We do our best.
We do have our last webinar scheduled for next month, June 7th, um, and June 5th.
Actually, June
Oh,
5th.
goodness, oops, the wrong slide. This is last year's webinar formats. Look at there, that's what happens when you're copying and pasting. Um, they're all available on YouTube. Yes, they are. Well, next month is June 7th, same time, same place. And our focus was going to be budgeting for accessibility. But we really have been reviewing things for budgets and potential grants and questions that have been coming in. And we thought we would pivot. We're gonna talk a smidge about that. But what we really, really, really want to do is invite you to send questions to us. What June 4th? Thank you, Amanda. Don't know what I would do without Amanda. We really want to invite you to send questions. What are the burning questions across all of our webinars that we have done that you haven't thought of? What are your staff talking about as you attempt to do alt text and you're like, wow, this picture is really hard? What issues are you running into when you are trying to do audio descriptions for a piece of art or an exhibit? What are you thinking about as you plan an upcoming festival? That hasn't happened in a while. I know we talked about lots of that stuff today, but we really want you to bring your questions, your concerns, your thoughts. You know, if we've shared something and you have tried it and it just didn't work, let's bring that back and share. We're gonna switch up the style a little bit for our last webinar, and really make this an opportunity to hear back from all of you. I think the last couple panel discussions that we've had have been so fantastic. So we are going to invite all of our past presenters to join us. TBD or to be determined if everyone will be there. But that is, we're just going to pivot a little bit given changes and content, and we really feel like that's going to be the best way to wrap up this really exciting webinar series. So you are going to get an email, everyone is, asking you to submit questions. Of course, you can show up and ask them live also. We're good with that. So on that note, I have not seen any more questions come through. Lots of thanks and appreciation and feedback on things that we're covering. So Dori and Mary Alex, I can't thank you both enough for your wealth of knowledge that you shared today. I know folks appreciate it so much, and this has just really been a great presentation today.
Thank y'all. It was wonderful.
Always happy to share.
All right. On that note, I'm closing us out. Have a great day, everybody. We will see you on June 4th.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.